Okay, so today I'm going to speak about the Nativity of Richard Strauss, the Bavarian composer. And I just want to say this is a new series I'll be launching here on the channel, the Nativity of series. It's a Richard Strauss is the first of the nativities I'll be examining. It's a great way to learn astrology, digging into people that we have good birth time for, checking out their biography, seeing how the transits and the techniques that we use line up with their lives. So just to say here, Richard Strauss, a German composer and conductor, pianist, very, very famous, very well known, born in Bavaria and Munich in 1864. Even with timing techniques like transits and annual profections, the natal chart is the ultimate filter. And this is an interpretive principle. We can use timing techniques to get into the natal chart, but we're ultimately really having to look at those natal configurations and that natal promise. And so I use this site, astroseek.com, a very popular site, but this site has a really nice traditional astrology calculator section where you can actually use their annual profections calculator to calculate profections. And you'll see in my talk here the images of what this can generate. I use it all the time. All right, so with Richard Strauss, we have rounded birth time. It's AA time. It comes from a letter that his father wrote, or a diary entry from his father, but it's rounded, so 6 a.m. And so that instantly means that could be something wrong with it. It's likely not exactly at 6 a.m. on the button, but because his ascendant is 15 degrees, it means there's a lot of leeway. And he's still going to be a Cancer rising. So we have a lot of leeway with his birth time. We shouldn't be too focused on the degree of the MC of the ascendant, because those could move if there's some leeway. He's got Mars and Aries in the 10th house of career. And so it's very nice, the ruler of the 10th and the 10th. It just says that he's got that ability to have a pure career, action in the world for its own sake. But look at the Mars opposition to Saturn. So he's got Saturn and Libra in the 4th, retrograde, 11 degrees, 18 degree minutes, applying to an opposition with Mars at 10 degrees, 30 degree minutes of Aries. That's kind of the most striking feature of his chart. And Saturn is ruled by the Egyptian term of Mercury. So both of the malefics are ruled by Mercury and Venus. And look at the chart here. Mercury and Venus exchange signs. Mercury in Taurus exchanges signs with Venus in Gemini. A classic composer chart signature where you have Venus, which can be sweet singing and music, with the Mercury, which is more the technical component and the writing component. If you've ever seen papers of composed music, it's very technical, it's its own language, very mercurial. And so he's got this very nice composer signature in the chart with Venus and Mercury exchanging signs. Venus is at 10 degrees in Gemini. And so Venus has a very tight applying sextile to Mars and a tight applying trine to Saturn, forming this right triangle. And I think you can think about Venus here as providing support and relief against the backdrop of this malefic standoff, this opposition. They both can kind of send these nice, easy aspects to Venus. And so maybe music is a refuge here. It takes the pressure off. And he had this long, illustrious musical career. His midheaven, so the MC degree, is ruled by Jupiter. It's in the 9th house in Pisces. And Jupiter is in the 5th house of creativity. So you have this chart signature as well for a great creative with the ruler of the MC in the 5th house. But then look, Jupiter in the 5th in Scorpio is ruled by Mars in the 10th. The 5th house placement of Jupiter has this double connection to the career parts of his chart. MC being ruled by Jupiter in the 5th of creativity, Jupiter in the 5th of creativity ruled by Mars in the 10th house of reputation and action in the world. All right, so the first event I want to look at, this is the event that shot him into international fame. It's his tone poem, Don Juan. It premiered in Weimar in November 1889. Tremendous critical response, and he had international fame and success almost immediately. The thing about this, and you can often see themes with artists being reflected in their natal chart, Mars is in the 10th house of career. And Mars has this ancient signification, and even into the moderns often, of promiscuity in affairs. It's this kind of martial, aggressive side of sex where you're using sex to kind of separate and break apart. And that's what Don Juan is about. It's about a player. This guy was very promiscuous. He was trying to find an ideal woman, but he was sleeping with a bunch of different women and breaking hearts. So again, you have this idea that Strauss's career and his early career with the success of Don Juan was very much related to Mars and martial themes in the 10th house. It was one of his most played pieces. It was a part of his repertoire for the rest of his career. He conducted it all the way up to the end of his life. And so we're going to look at the Time Lords activated by annual profections during this time. So in 1889, he turned 25, and I look at profections from the sextile primarily, and then the ascendant. So I look at both together. From sextile perfections, perfecting from his sun, the moon is the yearly Time Lord, and from perfections from the ascendant, the sun is his Time Lord. So both luminaries are activated as Time Lords this year. And you can see in the chart of this premiere, the transiting moon was moving through his first house. Very strong in the first house of self, one of the strongest houses in astrology. It's the domicile of the moon in his chart because his first house is in Cancer. So his transiting Time Lord, very, very strong. It's a new cycle because this is actually the activated house by sextile annual perfections, his first house, his Cancer first house. And anytime you have a annually perfected first house, it can be the beginning of a new cycle of some kind. And we see here this was his cycle of career and international fame being triggered by this transit and by this perfected year. Look at the transiting sun right close with his natal Jupiter in the 5th house of creativity. Very, very nice. Natal moon, the activated Time Lord moon, is being transited by both Saturn and Jupiter. So the moon in his nativity is in the 3rd house of its joy. It's receiving a trine from Jupiter in Capricorn. His moon is in Virgo. And the Saturn is transiting Virgo, right within 4 degrees of the natal moon. The trine from Jupiter is in the same 6th degree. And so both Time Lords were making these close applications to Jupiter, Jupiter being a really good planet in his chart because he was born during the day. And this is the moment where he shot into international fame and success. Next period of life I want to look at is he had this tour of North America. It was his first North American tour in the late winter of 1904 and into the spring of 1904. And starting at about, late February and into late March, about a month, he was in New York City conducting concerts at Carnegie Hall. During this year, when he turned 39 in 1903 in June, he has 2 Time Lords. So he's got Mercury, Time Lord from annual perfections from the sun, and Venus, yearly Time Lord from annual perfections from the ascendant. So both Mercury and Venus are activated. And look at the chart of that premiere. Both Mercury and Venus were co-present in Pisces, his 9th house, where his MC is. The 9th house is the house of travel, and in his chart it's related to his career because the MC is there. Both the Time Lords were in that transiting 9th house during the premiere. And actually, during this whole period of the North American tour, transiting Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, and the Sun traveled through his 9th house of international travel, of foreign travel, where his MC is. Also, during this chart of the premiere on 21st March 1904, you have Mars, the ruler of his 10th house, transiting the 10th house, so it's a Mars return for him. And Jupiter, starting in I think late February, Jupiter ingressed into Aries. A nice spot for Jupiter, right? Because Jupiter has triplicity rulership there. It's a masculine or day sign. And so he's got a Jupiter in the 10th house transit during this international tour, and his first tour in North America at Carnegie Hall, premiering his piece, conducting all of his famous works. So it's a very nice example, I think, of how when you have that pileup of transits over the midheaven and the house of the midheaven and the house that signifies travel and the 10th house of career, you can really see it manifest, and just like in his life we saw it manifest. Now finally I want to look at a period in Strauss's life where he is the piece he's most famous for in our day and age is this piece, Also sprach Zarathustra, Thus Spoke Zarathustra. And this is the opening music in the film 2001: A Space Odyssey. That is now just household music. If I played it here, which I'm not, you would instantly recognize it. And so this is after he died. He had this reinvigorated fame. The piece became well known after its use in Kubrick's film. And so this is when he and his music actually was injected through the mass media of film into the minds of people all over the world. The nativity lives on even after someone passes away, even after the soul leaves the body. That nativity can continue on. And so we often can look at transits after someone has passed to see how their work or how their memory will live on or be activated. And this is a really great example of that. So during the year of 2001: A Space Odyssey's premiere, Strauss was in a double Saturn profection year. Profections from the sun, the sect-light sun, and profections from the ascendant were both Saturn. Look at this, it's striking. The chart of the premiere of 2001: A Space Odyssey in Washington, D.C. Has Saturn transiting the 10th house, quite near his Mars and Aries in his nativity. So Saturn transiting Saturn to 15 degrees Aries, Mars and Aries in the nativity is at 10 degrees, but also the transiting sun was right with Saturn. And so he was getting all of this juice and power in that 10th house with the Saturn transit, the Time Lord Saturn transit. Venus and Mercury in this chart are in the same degree or within a degree, 22 degrees Pisces and 23 degrees Pisces, but quite close. And they're right near his MC. So his MC is at 18, maybe a little leeway for that MC, but he's got this great composer, the two planets that might represent composing music, Venus and Mercury, tightly conjoined and near the MC degree. The fate of a work could be locked in during these eclipse cycles, and so he's got the 10th fourth eclipses happening as a piece of his music becomes internationally famous outside of the world of classical music. Cartomancy pool, this is the gladness card, Mercury in Cancer, and it's interesting how we're dealing with a Cancer rising with Strauss's nativity and Mercury, that planet of writing, and he was this great composer. But yeah, the gladness card is really an interesting one. I think when I see this card about Mercury's significations of games and youth, and how when we're young, we often get this period in our lives, many of us, where we're able to play outside and have fun with friends. And, when we were in school, you had, field trips and you did these competitions playing outside. And I think also about the moon ruling Cancer and how that's the home life. And so often kids play at home. Play in the front yard, and so this is where you get the idea of gladness. There's this joy and this release of being home and having time to flit around and explore and smile and laugh with family members. I think there's energy that we can bring to our relationships when I see this card of playfulness and creating a safe zone for this kind of enjoyment. All right, as always, you can book a donation-based astrology reading with me, Astrology for All, sjanderson144.com. I'd love to read, and I look forward to reading for you. This audio is on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, other podcast players, and follow me on Twitter at sjanderson144, Instagram at sjanderson144.